The rain drizzled softly over the rooftops of Clifton. It was that specific British rain, persistent, quiet, and capable of soaking through to your bones in seconds. It reflected off the parked Autos and Volvos, and it soaked into the manicured front lawns of the red brick semi-detached homes that lined Maple Close. Maple Close was a street where people knew the postman's name. It was a street where bins were put out on time, and where a raised voice was considered a scandal. Inside number 18, the house was quiet. Too quiet for a Friday night, but just 2 nights prior, it had been a nightclub. Emily Carter, 20 years old, had been left home alone. Her mother, Helen, was visiting an aunt in Exeter. For Emily, this was not an opportunity for quiet reflection. It was a vacuum to be filled with noise. She had thrown an impromptu party. Music, heavy bass, repetitive lyrics had thumped from her bedroom window until well past 2 a.m. Laughter, shouting, the specific, grating sound of 20-somethings who believe they are the only people on earth. The noise had echoed off the alley walls shared with number 16 and number 20, creating a canyon of disturbance. The next morning, the evidence was damning. Empty crisp packets, red plastic cups crushed into the pavement, a shattered glass bottle that glittered dangerously in the sunlight, and, most tragically, the toppled terracotta planter belonging to Mrs. Kapoor, the retired school teacher next door. The lavender she had nurtured for 3 years lay broken and dying on the concrete. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over the past 6 weeks, Emily's behavior had steadily escalated. It was a crescendo of selfishness. She had turned up her Spotify playlist during late-night study sessions, cranking it loud enough for the elderly couple across the street to hear every explicit lyric. She had hosted friends without notice, letting them spill into the backyard with takeaway containers and loud voices that carried over the fences, when Mr. Jenkins, a man of infinite patience, had politely knocked one evening asking if she could keep it down a bit. Emily had rolled her eyes. She had leaned against the doorframe, phone in hand, and muttered, "It's not like I'm breaking the law." But she was wrong. According to UK antisocial behavior policy, she very nearly was. Legally, antisocial behavior is defined as conduct that has caused, or is likely to cause, harassment, alarm, or distress to any person, noise, nuisance, intimidation, persistent disregard for community, peace. Emily Carter was ticking every box, asterisk. The breaking point arrived in the form of an email. 3 households had formally submitted written complaints to the Residents Association. They cited broken sleep. They cited anxiety. They cited physical hazards in the shared space. The committee had no choice. They called an emergency neighborhood meeting, a rare step in modern suburban life, usually reserved for planning permission disputes or pothole complaints. Emily was lounging on the navy blue sofa when the notice arrived in her mother's email inbox. She was wearing her usual uniform, dark denim jeans that fit perfectly, and a plain white t-shirt. She was barefoot, her feet resting on the coffee table. "Whatever," she had said with a shrug, barely glancing up from TikTok. "They're all just old and bitter. I'm not doing anything wrong. It's a free country." But to the neighbors who had watched her grow up, who had brought over baby gifts when she was born, who had waved hello every morning for 2 decades, her actions felt like a betrayal. The community center on Elmwood Lane smelled of old library books and stale tea. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a harsh, clinical light on the proceedings. 7 residents sat in a circle of folding chairs. Their expressions were a mix of concern, fatigue, and disappointment. Helen Carter sat alone. Helen was 52. She was a woman of dignity. She wore a simple beige blouse and black trousers, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She sat with her hands clenched tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. She had expected a few murmurs, perhaps a gentle word in the supermarket, She had not expected this tribunal. Mrs. Kapoor spoke first. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of 40 years in the classroom. Helen, she said gently, we all love Emily. She's bright. She's kind, or she used to be. But lately, it's like she doesn't see us as people anymore. She sees us as obstacles to her fun. Mr. Jenkins nodded. He looked tired. Last Tuesday, my wife couldn't sleep for 3 hours because of the baths. You know she has heart trouble, Helen. We're not asking for silence. Just basic respect. The final speaker was young Ben Taylor from number 22, a quiet man in his early 30s who worked remotely. It's not just the noise, Ben said, leaning forward. It's the attitude. When I asked her to pick up a bottle she left in the alley, she laughed. She actually laughed and said, clean it yourself. That's not the Emily we know. Helen's cheeks burned. The heat of shame started at her neck and rose to her hairline. She apologized profusely. She promised to speak with Emily. She assured them she would take action, but inside, a cold dread settled in her chest. She knew her daughter. Emily had always been strong-willed, but lately that strength had curdled into arrogance. She had stopped listening not just to the neighbors, but to her own mother, asterisk back home. The contrast was jarring. Helen walked into the living room. It was warm. The cream walls were soft by lamplight. It was a sanctuary of comfort, and there was Emily, still on the sofa, still scrolling. Did you read the email? Helen asked. Her voice was quiet, but it had a tremor of suppressed emotion. Emily didn't look up. Yeah, dramatic much? It was one party. One party? Helen's voice cracked. Emily, they are talking about antisocial behavior. 3 families filed formal complaints. Mrs. Kapoor cried in that meeting. Emily finally glanced up. Her expression flashed with irritation. Oh, come on, Mom. They're acting like I burned the house down. It's not a big deal. But it is, Helen said, stepping closer. Because you don't care. That's the problem. You won't even pretend to care. Emily scoffed. She tossed her phone onto the cushion. I'm 20, not 12. I don't need a lecture about being nice to the neighbors. I pay for my own phone. I'm an adult. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'm an adult. Helen stared at her daughter. She saw the jeans, the white t-shirt, the bare feet on the rug she had vacuumed that morning, and she felt a deep, aching grief. This wasn't just rebellion. It was a dismissal. Emily was dismissing the fundamental covenant of their family: kindness, accountability, community. That night, after Emily went to bed still texting, still laughing, Helen sat at the kitchen table with a cup of Earl Grey. She stared out at the dark, rain-soaked garden. She thought of her own mother. She thought of the women who raised her with firm love and clear boundaries. And she realized that treating Emily like a roommate wasn't working. Emily needed a mother, and sometimes a mother has to be a force of nature. Asterisk. The next evening, the rain had returned. They ate a quiet dinner of shepherd's pie. The clinking of forks against china was the only sound. After dinner, Helen stood up. Come into the living room, Emily. Why? Emily asked, reaching for her phone. Leave the phone, Helen commanded. Now, something in her tone stopped Emily. It wasn't the nagging tone. It was the command tone. Emily followed her into the living room. Sit, Helen said, pointing to the single armchair near the window. Emily frowned, but she complied. She sat down, crossing her legs, looking bored. She was still wearing the white t-shirt and jeans. The room was warm. The standing lamp cast a golden pool of light around the chair. Helen walked to the hallway commode. She opened the drawer. She returned in her hand. She held it. A wooden HAIRB juice. It was smooth. Dark wood. Heavy. It wasn't a weapon. It was an antique. It was an object of grooming, of care. But in this context, it was a gavel. Emily's eyes widened. She sat up straighter. Mom, what are you doing? Helen stood before her. She didn't look angry. She looked resolute. You have disrespected good people who have shown you nothing but kindness your whole life, Helen said. Her voice was calm, unwavering. You have broken trust. You have ignored warnings. You have refused to take responsibility. You claim to be an adult, yet you act with less empathy than a child. Mom, seriously? Emily started to stand. Sit down, Helen snapped. The authority in her voice was absolute. Emily sank back. Tonight, Helen said, you will feel the consequence of that arrogance. Words have failed. The email failed. The meeting failed. This will not fail. Asterisk, stand up, Helen said. Emily hesitated. She looked at the brush. She looked at her mother. She saw no negotiation in Helen's eyes. She stood. Lean over the arm of the chair. Mom, no. I'm 20. Exactly, Helen said. You are 20. Old enough to know better. Old enough to take it. Now, lean over. Slowly, Emily turned. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a sudden, grounding reality. She bent at the waist. She rested her chest against the navy blue cushion. Her hands gripped the fabric. Her denim jeans stretched tight across her seat. Helen stepped up behind her. This is for Mrs. Kapoor, Helen said. THWACK. The sound was sharp. The impact was solid. The brush connected with the denim. It wasn't a light tap. It was a firm, stinging swat that vibrated through the heavy fabric. Emily gasped. Her body jerked forward. Ow! 1, Helen counted. Black. 2, that is for Mr. Jenkins and his wife. Emily bit her lip. The sting was blooming now, a hot, spreading sensation that made her eyes water. Thwack. 3, that is for Ben Taylor. Mom, please, Emily whimpered. The arrogance was gone. The cool, detached 20-year-old was gone. Quiet, Helen said. Take it. Thwack. 4, that is for the shattered glass you left for someone else to clean up. Emily began to cry. Not loud sobs, but the quiet, shocked tears of someone whose ego is being dismantled. Black. 5, that is for the lie you told me about being responsible. Helen paused. She let the silence fill the room. She let the rain tap against the window. She let Emily feel the weight of the moment. She raised the brush for the final time. Thwack. 6, Helen whispered. That is for forgetting who you are. Asterisk, it was over. Helen set the brush down on the side table. Emily stayed bent over for a moment, her shoulders shaking, her hands clutching the cushion. The physical sting was there, yes, but the emotional impact was seismic. She felt small. She felt seen. And for the first time in months, she felt guilty. Helen reached down. She took Emily's arm gently. Stand up. Emily stood. Her face was wet. Her nose was red. She turned to face her mother, rubbing her hip through the jeans. Helen didn't scold her further. She pulled her daughter into a tight, fierce embrace. This isn't about hurting you, Helen whispered into Emily's hair. It's about reminding you. You are a Carter. We do not hurt our neighbors. We do not act like the world revolves around us. Emily sobbed into her mother's shoulder. The dam broke. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so sorry. I was awful. Yes, you were, Helen said, stroking her back. But you won't be anymore. Asterisk, the next morning, Emily woke with a sore backside and a heavier heart. The sun was trying to break through the clouds. She dressed in the same jeans and white t-shirt. But this time, she added a soft green cardigan. It was her mother's favorite color. It was a peace offering to the world. She didn't look at her phone. She brewed tea. She sat at the kitchen table. She took a piece of paper and a pen. She wrote a list. 1. Mrs. Kapoor 2. Mr. Jenkins 3. Ben Taylor. She spent the morning in the alleyway. She took a bucket of hot soapy water and a stiff brush. She scrubbed the stains from the concrete. She swept up the last of the micro-dash glass dot. She drove to the garden center. She bought a new terracotta planter. She bought a sack of soil and 3 pots of English lavender. Then, one by one, she knocked on their doors. To Mrs. Kapoor. She handed the planter and a handwritten note. I'm sorry for treating your kindness like weakness. You deserve better. To Mr. Jenkins. I didn't think about your wife. I should have. I'm sorry. To Ben. You were right. I was rude. Thank you for calling me out. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't make excuses about stress or youth. She simply showed up, quietly, consistently, humbly. Later that afternoon, she sat in her room journaling. I thought being an adult meant doing whatever I wanted. But real adulthood is seeing how your actions ripple through other people's lives. The neighbors didn't want to control me. They just wanted to feel safe in their own homes. And I took that away. Her regret wasn't dramatic. It was daily. It was choosing silence over noise. It was choosing respect over convenience. 2 weeks later, the Maple Close WhatsApp group buzzed with a new message. It wasn't a complaint. Emily, number 18. Hi everyone. I'm hosting a quiet garden tea this Saturday, 3 p.m. Bio biscuits. Hope you can come. X day arrived sunny and mild. A classic English afternoon. Neighbors trickled into the backyard of number 18. Some were hesitant at first. They remembered the noise. They remembered the attitude. But then they saw the garden. String lights were hung neatly. A tablecloth was laid out. There were homemade scones and a bowl of clotted cream. And there was Emily. She greeted each one. She was wearing her jeans, her white tee, and the green cardigan. Her hair was tied back. Her smile was genuine. Mrs. Kapoor, please take this chair. It's more comfortable. Mr. Jenkins, how is Mrs. Jenkins today? Then I brought those custard creams you like. Mrs. Kapoor brought shortbread. Mr. Jenkins brought his wife, who looked frail but happy to be out. Even Ben showed up, looking surprised, but pleased. Helen watched from the kitchen window. She held a cup of tea in her hand. The house looked the same. The street looked the same. The rain would come back eventually, but something had shifted. Something quiet and deep. As laughter rose from the garden. Gentle, respectful laughter. Emily caught her mother's eye through the glass. She gave a small, grateful nod. She wasn't just home. She was herself again. She was a member of the community, narrator, and so peace returns to Maple Close. The lesson was hard, the method was old-fashioned, but the result is undeniable. It begs the question, in our modern world, where we often prioritize individual freedom over communal responsibility, is there still a place for strict traditional accountability? Did Helen go too far, or did she do exactly what was needed to save her daughter from a life of selfishness? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember, good fences make good neighbors, but good manners make a community.